Hi there, my name is Damon DiMarco, and my son Ethan asked me to do a quick video about the Battle of Monmouth in the Revolutionary War. It's also called the Battle of Monmouth Courthouse. So let's get to it. This battle took place on June 28th, 1778 in Monmouth County, New Jersey. The Revolutionary War was already 3 years old. Things were not going well for the Americans. British troops had captured the American capital at Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Members of the American Congress had fled to the town that today we call York, Pennsylvania. Back then it was called Yorktown. George Washington tried rousting the British from Philadelphia, but it didn't succeed. After the Battle of Germantown, he and his army were forced to retreat. They went to Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, and you've probably heard about this. In Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, they spent a very, very long winter being very cold, very tired, and very hungry. It was such a deadly winter that more American soldiers died at camp in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, than they did at any single battle during the entire Revolutionary War. But Valley Forge was a very important turning point for the American army. George Washington used the winter at Valley Forge to reorganize his army completely. He trained them to be better fighters, better tacticians, and he also showed them how to work better together. By the time Washington and his troops marched out of Valley Forge on June 19th of 1778, they were a tougher and far more formidable fighting force. One of Washington's first moves was to chase the British through Pennsylvania all the way across the width of New Jersey to Monmouth Courthouse. The two forces clashed on June 28th, 1778. Now that day was really hot. I mean really hot. People say that the temperature was mostly above 100 degrees for most of the day. That's pretty hot. And it was humid. Really humid. It's not the heat that gets you, it's the humidity. We can imagine soldiers on both sides of the conflict sweating in their clothes. It was just incredibly uncomfortable. Washington's army outnumbered the British by approximately 2-1. And Washington's assistant, General Charles Lee, began the battle by attacking the British army's rear flank. That flank was commanded by Sir Henry Clinton. The problem was that General Lee did not attack hard enough. And so the British, led by General Charles Cornwallis, fought back against the American troops. That was not good. The tables turned quickly, and the Americans were beaten back. At this point, George Washington arrived in person. He took General Charles Lee out on the field of battle, and he had a huge argument right in front of everybody. This would be like if your mom and dad had a huge argument at a neighborhood block party and your mom took the keys away from your dad and your dad said, "No, give me the keys back," and they were fighting in front of everybody, or something like that. Washington reassigned the troops away from General Charles Lee, and he gave them to his other generals, including General William Alexander, and a young Frenchman who had come all the way from Europe to help out with the American Revolution, and his name was the Marquis de Lafayette. Now, he was only 20 years old at the time, and he barely spoke any English, but every time he took to the field of battle, it really inspired the American troops. So, what happened next? Reorganized under these different generals, the Americans fought back against the British. The battle raged for hours. It went back and forth. First, the British seemed to be winning, then the Americans seemed to be winning. All the while, they were sweating under the hot summer sun. A word to the wise. Bullets and mini balls and cannons, they can kill soldiers very quickly, but so can a hot sun when you're wearing too many clothes and you have absolutely no access to drinking water. That's how you get heat stroke. In fact, one of the legends that comes out of that day was the legend of Mary Hayes. She was the wife of one of the American soldiers, and she was helping out to fight the British. What she realized is that the American soldiers needed more than anything was water, and so she began hauling pitchers of water onto the battlefield and serving it to the soldiers, and that's how she earned the name Molly Pitcher. So who won the Battle of Monmouth? Well, nobody did. 6 p.m. After a long and very, very hot and humid day of fighting, the British troops began to withdraw. Now, at this point, one of the American generals, a man by the name of Mad Anthony Wayne, he's fiery, he's crazy, he's like Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon. Mad Wayne asked George Washington if he could in fact pursue the British troops and beat them as they fled, but George Washington said no. Enough damage has been done today. And so, overnight, the British troops slipped away to New York City, where a few of them are still hiding in the subway systems, or so it's been said. In the end, between 65 and 300 American soldiers were killed, with about 170 to 770 wounded, and approximately 64 gone missing or captured. On the other side of the coin, the British soldiers suffered about 60 fatalities, with about 35 captured. Now, most of these fatalities on both sides of the battle were said to have come about not because of bullets or cannon or anything like that. They simply got so hot that they dropped dead. That's how hot it was that day. However, General Charles Lee of the American side was court-martialed for being such a terrible leader. He pretty much sat out the rest of the war. The fame and influence of the Frenchman, the Marquis de Lafayette, grew and grew because every time he walked on a field of battle, the Americans were inspired that this young gentleman had come across the entire ocean to help them fight. Best of all, George Washington had proved that his Continental Army could be a match for the British. The war had not been going for them very well up until the Battle of Monmouth, and even though the American side did not win, they showed the British that they could certainly give them a run for their money. And that boded well for the rest of the war. So that is my really quick video on the Battle of Monmouth. If you like this video, please hit subscribe, and one of the little buttons or something, it's either on the screen here or it could be like way down here. I don't know where it is, but you'll find it. If you have any requests for other videos you'd like to see, please email them to us or put them in the comments, and we'll see you next time.